Real pleasure to welcome you to this session focusing on institutional services for delinquent youth. And today we have already heard many evidence-based reports indicate that closed institutions and prisons frequently yield adverse outcomes rather than offering support. And juveniles incarcerated or locked in closed institutions and correctional institutions tend to exhibit so-called prisonization effect, including hostility towards the institution, negative perceptions of the legal system, and of course heightened level of delinquent self-identification. So it seems that prisons and correctional facilities are a really bad place for juveniles. However, sometimes we see that this is the last resort necessity for intervention. So maybe the focus when talking about institutions should be not on institution as such, but rather on the quality and range and even the length of services provided in there. So today, in this session, we are privileged to have experts from Norway, Sweden, Estonia, and Lithuania, sharing their insights and experiences on the critical topic. So let's explore how we can better support and rehabilitate our delinquent youth. And I'm delighted to introduce our first speaker. It's Kristin Tandberg. Kristin works as a senior advisor in the Norwegian Directorate of Correctional Services, Prisons and Probation, with a background in social work, pedagogy, organizational management, and project management. She brings over 30 years of experience in correctional services. Her presentation will delve into how Norway organizes and facilitates the execution of sentences for minors and young people. Yes, Kristin, so please, the floor is yours.
Yes, hello, and thank you for the introduction, Virginia. I'm going to talk about how Norway organizes and facilitates the execution of sentence for minors and young people. And first, I will briefly provide some facts and numbers concerning of young people aged 15 to 24 who are serving sentence in prison and the society. Then I will provide you with more detailed presentation of our youth units targeting individuals 15 to 18 years. Following that, I will elaborate on our national strategy for young offenders and inmates aged 18 to 24, which addresses how we can better accommodate young adults and the measures we have in place or intend to implement. Yes. Now I will show you the development of enforcement in reaction for young offenders 15 to 24 years. There are two main characteristics that are prominent when reviewing sentencing for young offenders during the last decade. Firstly, there has been a step decline in number of young people being sentenced. There has been a significant decline both in number serving unconditional prison sentence and community penalties. Secondly, there have been major changes to where and how unconditional prison sentences have been completed. Approximately half of young offenders sentenced in prison sentence complete these sentences with electronic monitoring. This is the main reason that the majority of young offenders now complete their sentence in the community. As you see, there is more in the community than in prison. Now, I'm going to speak about the units for the minors between 15 and 18 years old. These units are called UE, and we briefly explain, and I will now briefly explain the background for the establishment of the units. In the beginning of 2000s, there was a political will to change the manner in which the Norwegian community meets minors who commit criminal acts. White paper on alternative sanctions toward juveniles delinquents states quite clearly that this overall goal of the government that the minors should not be imprisoned. But the government also means that someone have to be in prison. 2 units for the minors were established in Norway to ensure that the children and the young people would no longer be held together with the adults in prison. That was a very important thing for us. So, I know I'm going to talk about how the units are organized today. Regarding capacity, among the 2 units, we have total 10 places. In addition, there are 3 space places in a regular prison that offer enhanced supervision for minors until a place becomes available in the units for the minors. The cost per prison cell is 700,000 euros per year. Staffing includes total 32 full-time employees at the unit with a balanced distribution between management, prison officers, and activity therapists. In addition, there are interdisciplinary teams in both units. The teams have representatives from the authorities responsibility for healthcare, child welfare and service, and educational service. Yes, here you can see the gray line shows the yearly number of the imprisonments. The yellow and purple bars represent the 2 units. Here you can see that there has been a significant increase from 2022 to 2023. This is due to a rise in the youth crime, which we have think and heard is linked to organized crime, as we have heard earlier today. So, and now to the measures that are offered in the units. Our initiatives include, for example, education, jobs, program activities, rehabilitation, and physical activity. We provide education, custom sites to the specific needs, and learning styles to each individual. The minors are offered therapy sessions addressing underlying issues and promoting positive mental health. This is crucial for their rehabilitation. We engage individuals to activities to create sense of responsibility and to contribution to personal development. Our approach is methodical and guided by therapeutic and risk-need responsivity principles, R&R. This is to ensure a comprehensive and effective strategy for the rehabilitation. There are established special rules for the minors, and I will now present a limited selection of these rules. The minor can receive visits from close family for up to 3 days, and the costs are covered by the prison. They can make 3 calls, 20 minutes a week, but normally they are allowed to call whenever they want. And they are also allowed the possibility to make video calls with the iPad. They participate in the community during work, training, and other measures. There are stricter conditions when it comes to using separation or exclusion from the other inmates. Lastly, there is an obligation to continuously evaluate the possibility of progress to execution in society. The first part of my presentation now was focused on the minors, which are between 15 and 18. The following part will focus on the young offenders between 18 and 24. And I think that is relevant because the minors growing up. And the Norwegian Correctional Service has acknowledged that we have had too little focus on accommodating young offenders who are serving sentence in prison and in the society. This strategy particularly applies to 4 groups. The first are the offenders who are transferred from the youth units, as I told about now, for the minors who transferred to the regular prisons, where they turn to when they are 18 years old. Regular prisons have a much more restrictive regime, and the second group are the young offenders who isolate themselves and suffer psychological harm, and the last group are the young gang criminals and those who have committed sexual offenses. In addition to the knowledge about minors from, and now I have to knowledge regarding to the cognitive and developmental needs of young people ages 18 to 24. This informs us that young adult offenders need enhanced and specific intervention to follow up, same as the minors. So, young adults have the great capacity and potential to learn and develop positively. Therefore, resources must be utilized effectively and during their sentence. Access to training and education, employment, and the coordinated effort from different agencies enable sentence to be used as an arena for change. We believe that these resources could assist the Correctional Service in cooperation with the young offenders. So, the national strategy is an important part of work implemented in the business plan of the Directorate. We aim to be a correctional service that is forward-thinking and constantly evaluating how we work in a different way in order to secure a better future for the young offenders. An effective and safe management of the rehabilitation for this group is cost-effective for the society and has a positive effect for the victims, their families, and the offenders themselves. The Correctional Service can make a difference through punishment that enables a change, we think. Firstly, we are forward-looking in our work with young offenders. Young offenders have a higher likelihood for reoffending than adult offenders. The first step in reducing the risk of reoffending involves assessing their needs and resources. During the sentence, there should be a cooperation between young offender and the correctional services. Young offenders must be motivated to take responsibility and use their own resources to being agent of self-change, thought, a mutually binding agreement with the Correctional Service. The staff must motivate young offenders' interventions in order to avoid any harm caused by the isolation. The Correctional Service will facilitate the young offenders to access to relevant health service as well as service from voluntary and user organizations. The second area focuses on the safety and the security for the community, the young offender and the staff. Many young offenders have been convicted of serious offenses. This demands an individual risk assessment during the sentence to ensure the safety of both the young offenders, staff members, and others. Systematic work plans will contribute to a safer transition when the sentence has been completed. Young offenders transferred from youth institution to ordinary prison are particularly vulnerable. We need to actively use the family and the youth offender's perspective when assessing the safety. Lastly, we focus on obtaining knowledge and competence regarding young offenders, 1824. I think we know much more about the minors than about the young adults. The Correctional Service has a particular need for competency regarding who the young offenders are, how to regulate their behavior, and how sentences can be effective. Oops, oh, sorry. So, our aims for 2026. Will we be there? We want that all young offenders will be assessed when their sentence begins. We want that a binding agreement is agreed between the Correctional Service and the young offenders about the plan for and the completion of their sentence. A coordinated team will be a responsibility for the young offenders during the sentence, involving close cooperation with the agencies and the professionals in the young offenders' home area, municipality. The Correctional Service will target the young offenders' attitude to offending, including their membership of gangs, sexual offending, and issues in relation to a violent behavior. Young offenders who have completed their sentence will be provided with safe and appropriate accommodation and offered education or employment. They will have been supported in dealing with any substance abuse and or mental health issues, and to deal with outstanding debts. They will have a non-offending network and a good quality life with a positive prospect. Easy. So, what do we need to do to achieve our goals by 2026? We have already adapted our national assessment tool, BRIC, to age group for young offenders. We are working on special rules for young adults as well, similar the rules for the minors, which I presented earlier, some of them. Young offenders affiliated with gangs often find themselves on the outside of the society and hostile to authorities. Their offending identity can make working together difficult throughout their sentence. Therefore, there's a need to establish a cooperation with the police, municipality, and NGOs. Several organizations in the voluntary sector have established specialist intervention for young offenders. This includes various forms of practical help, activities, and social networking during the following completion of the sentence. And many young offenders need support and help in relation to physical and mental health, and we aim to facilitate health service. There is a need to strengthen the knowledge among staff within the Correctional Service who work with young offenders. Knowledge about these young people are, what they are sentenced for, and their specific needs is necessary for tailoring an individual's sentence. Young people can display an unpredictable and unacceptable behavior, and staff and members need the competency to support in order to manage such behavior. Training will be strengthened, knowledge in relation to risk behavior, how to establish a good working relationships, and the use of reflection, networking, including in the family, trauma-informed care, use of restorative process, etc. Approximately in Norway, 400 people are serving the sentence in ordinary prison at any time. This is from the 18 to 24 years. And there is a need to establish young offender teams to enhance following up. And we have established some team today, and we want more. Approximately 400 young people are subject to community sentence at any time, at one time. When completing community sentence, the young offenders needs a framework which is tailored to the challenges they face in their life. A dedicated staff member responsible for young offenders will be in the charge of providing appropriate and professional interventions to each individual young offender. And here is our sources, and I like to say thank you for the attention, please.
Okay, so thank you, Kristen, for your detailed presentation, and particularly thank you for broadening the perspective by including young adults, because I think that, the developmental specialists and psychologists really highlight that this maturation and adulthood doesn't come in the morning of the 18th birthday. And that's why we need some extra services and maybe some prolonged services for this target group as well. And that's why also the title of our conference includes children and youth. So we're not talking only about these smaller youngsters. Thank you very much. And I'm sure that this presentation also brought some comments or questions to the audience, to you as well. But I would like to kindly ask you to hold them until the end of all presentations, when the floor for discussions will be opened. So I would like to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Sara Löwenhöjd. She has been serving as the head of the research unit at the Swedish National Board of Institutional Care since 2018. Dr. Sara also has a clinical background and is a licensed psychologist in child and adolescent psychiatric care. And today she will talk about the compulsory care of youth in Sweden and will present us an overview of needs, challenges, and progress. So please welcome Dr. Sara Löwenhöjd.
This is a digital era, so I brought my own computer to address the already existing computer. Yes, thank you for inviting us to this conference and to take part of all these ideas and collaborations and initiatives. Very interesting for us. We've been asked to tell you a bit about our mission, our needs and challenges, and our progress as well. I have a lot of slides, a lot of information, but we could skip some, and you can keep it for your documentation afterwards. And please post questions, but after in the coffee area. So I've been with the National Board for almost 10 years now. In the beginning as a psychologist, developing treatment programs and interventions for the youth, and for the last 7 years as the head of the research and development department. So I've seen things during these years. I'm going to skip. I realized I want to start with this picture. We have 21 special residential homes in all of Sweden, but like mostly in the south because it's most people there. We also have 11 homes for adults with misuse problems. We have 4,200 employees, but also 2,000 extras. I will talk about that more. And we have a 3.9 billion turnover, so it's a quite costly intervention we have. It could cost more. I think that will be a thing in the future. And the cost per day per child is 11,000 crowns, which is around 1,000 euros. And the cost is divided by the state that pays 1/3, and the rest is paid by the municipalities that place the kid in our facilities. And now I'm backing again. I would like to start with saying something about the Swedish system for social 24/7 care. It says residential care here. It's wrong. Sorry. It's like when a young person is placed outside its home, most often, all around the clock. And we have like 2 million people from like 21 under the age of 21 in Sweden, and 30,000 of these are placed every year in some kind of 24/7 setting. And most of these interventions are family foster homes. And as you can see, the blue bars, that's vast majority of these kids are in treatment by free will. And the brown bars, the dark brown and the light brown, is when they have not given their consent to be in treatment. And SIS, it's the Swedish abbreviation of National Board for Institutional Care. We have 1,000 out of these 30,000 young people under 21, and it's the group that has the vastest problems and the most complex problems in the entire country. And we have no age limit, so everyone could come to us that is in need. So we have had children as young as 9 years old. And for this presentation, you could like imagine a 9-year-old and a 13-year-old and a 15-year-old and a 16-year-old, someone you know, and like visualize that person when we talk about these young people. And it's so young. I have a 14-year-old and a 17-year-old, and they couldn't manage this because they're kids. I have to press the right button, so many buttons here. We have 3 acts that applies to social compulsory care in Sweden, and these acts cover a broad population. So we have a lot of different problems, different needs, different ages, and different problems in our facilities. We have the Act of LVU. It translates to Law of Care of Youth. And it's a social services that request compulsory care at the administrative court, and it's the court that makes the decision if the young kid is going to be placed. And to be placed in a home with us, the National Board homes, you have to present severe psychosocial problems, substance abuse, or criminal behavior. So these are the 3 things you have to present. And then we have the Act of LSU. It's Secure Youth Care. And this is if you have committed a serious crime. The kids in the LVU have committed crimes as well, but not as serious as the ones in when you are you're serving a penalty under the under juvenile criminal law. And it might sound like a prison thing. It's not. The LVU and the LSU are kind of they're very alike. The criminality is much more severe in the LSU, but it's also comparable to the kids that is not in the LSU homes. And we also provide the same care, the same interventions for the side problems such as misuse and family problems and mental health issues. We also provide trauma-informed care in both ways. So they are different, but they are also the same population in one way. And this is a conference for youth, but I would like to say that we also have the LVM, the compulsory treatment for adults with severe life-threatening substance abuse. And one of our primary missions is to be able to provide a place immediately and for everyone that has the entrance bill. And the demand is quite the same. It hasn't really raised much, but slightly. But we have big problems providing places immediately. Because one explanation for this is that our housing is quite old. In 1994, the state, the government took over every private, regional treatment homes in Sweden, and we took it all in. It was old hospitals, private facilitations, but the state of the housing is quite poor, and we have to renovate, and we have to make them safe for fire, of course, and this decreased the amount of places to be able to fill with kids. So we have a line now in Sweden, and that is not how it should be. Another challenge is that, as you can see here, and LSU, in last year, 2023, we had 101 young people in serving these penalties in our facilities. And just 1 year ago, previous to that, we had 54. And we didn't see it coming, actually. We thought it would come, but not that fast and not with that impact. So we've been like building like bricks and building houses. And it's also a problem because we have to take places for the LVU in order to be able to give the care for the ones who had committed crimes. So it's a tough situation right now. However, there's a government bill right now suggesting that the young people who is in the secure homes right now will be moved to youth prisons. We don't have youth prisons yet in Sweden, but this is a suggestion from the politics. And the youth prisons will be arranged by the ordinary prison system. And the suggestion is that starting 2026. What do we think about this? I think Taimi Nilsson, I think you're the next speaker, I think, and you say no child should be in prison, and I think that too. So, but if the bill is passing, we have to build it together. We have to have schools. We have to have everything that we have. Like children aren't short grown-ups. They're another thing. You have to have assessment that is made for kids, and you have to have treatment that's made for kids. So this is something we're in together, and we will, if it passes, we will do it good. In order to create safe spaces for all the kids we treat, we are given the possibility to use coercive measures. That is, we can search for drugs, we can search for dangerous objects, and in order to keep the safety on the ward. And every time this is done, there has to be a written decision about it. So afterwards, the kid could appeal a complaint against the decision. And this is also good for another way, because we can collect it and we have statistics about it. So we know we can count all of them, and that's really good for the follow-up. Another way to keep the words safe and sound is to be able to follow the human rights and the rights of the child. We used to say that like the constraints, the compulsory thing is like a frame, and that's something good, because it gives us the possibility to stop and slow down and to hinder behavior that is dangerous to others and to oneself. But inside of this frame, we should really work towards that the best of the child. The frame is also for the best of the child. But inside the frame, we should try to include the child in all decision making, give all information about all rights, and help them to use these rights inside of our facilitation and outside. And we support independence and integrity of the work, and we work, like the foundation of our work is to create alliances and bonds. And that's everything. That means everything for the work that will follow afterwards. So if you don't have a working alliance with the kid, it doesn't matter how fancy treatment programs you have. So this is the core. This is also a challenge for us. And this is not like, what you see here is not just challenging, of course, for the young person that is the disease of burden that you see here for the young kid, but also for the institution that is providing care for these people. The National Board is a social institute. We provide social care. We have psychologists and we have nurses at our homes, at every home, but that's like a basic level of healthcare. And this is expert level of psychiatry. And we can't sort that out on our own. And you have to be in the healthcare system if you have these conditions. And if you have like one psychiatric diagnosis, and if you have more than one, you have to have a psychiatrist. We also see, this is a study actually from, as we did with the Karolinska Institutet earlier this year. We found some somatic diagnoses as well. And that's mostly like pollen sneezes and scratchy skin, and like they're too young to have developed actual physical conditions yet. So they're healthy because they're kids. But if they continue this lifestyle, this way of life, they will develop more severe conditions as well. And I don't know if this works in your countries, but it's like the social care and the healthcare doesn't speak the same language. We can't go to a person and say, hey, let's help you. It's so hard. And we had a government project for a couple of years now where like these kids, these extra kids, is having the proper treatment for their conditions. And we see that it works. We can work together. We have to be really rough sometimes with each other and really solve it together, but we can work. And we've also seen that we have given over 100 children now psychiatric care that they would not have received if they weren't in this project. And like now, I think they are talking about maybe what should we do with this project? Should we continue it, or should we make another law, or should we stop it? And I really hope that they will and then when I say they, I mean the government, will focus on this group because it's so important. And if you want to know how to work together and with the healthcare providers, we can talk in the coffee break. Yeah. I would like to address some important organizational factors that we see is a good way to organize care in closed settings. We have small units, at top max 7 people at a time, 7 children at a time. Sometimes we have 3 kids at a time. And this is due to that we target different groups. Oh, I see now there is like a number like counting down. I have 2 minutes left, so I had my computer hiding that. And therefore I will skip actually to the last. I wouldn't show this too because I'd made it myself in PowerPoint. We have people doing this for real, so we have a good real picture soon. But this is Antonovsky's sense of coherence. This is this is our treatment philosophy. You have to treat, you have to have a stem, you have to have stabilization factors, you have to eat, you have to sleep, you have to rest, you have to be able to be addressed in your trauma. When you come from this chaotic situation, you're a kid, you're 9, 13, 15, 17, and you've been pulled from your group, from your parents, from what you know, and you're placed at a countryside in a new home. And you have things with you. So we have to work with the stem and stabilize. And then we have to work at the crown, giving, like, motivate. Why? What is important in life for you? Where are you? Where will you be in 10 years? What kind of person would you like to be? What's the meaning with this? And then we also have the treatment programs in order to give tools to be able to operate in society. Because that's the thing always. You should be here at SIS as short time as you could ever know. Like the minute you come in our homes, we start planning how it would be when you leave. And you're with us for the shortest time ever possible. I'm 5 seconds plus now. But that's the important thing. We're not the solution. We're just a small part in the chain, and we should prepare for the things that will come after us. And to be able to do that, we have to work together with Fryshuset, for example, with healthcare, with the social services, with football organizations, because we can do it on our own. It's impossible, but we can work together. So, yes. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you for sharing your insights and also for emphasizing the need to target mental health issues. I think this is really very important, and it seems that this individualized approach that is very important, that the thinking that one size fits all doesn't work in this system. Yes, so thank you again for bringing this perspective to us. And our next speaker is Taimi Nilsson, who serves in the Prevention Department of the Victim Support and Prevention Service at the Estonian Social Insurance Board. And currently, Taimi leads the team responsible for child secure care. With over a decade of experience, Taimi has worked extensively with Estonia's most high-need and high-risk behavior children, and her roles ranged from caregiver to the position of the MDFT specialist. So the title of her presentation today is really very promising, as already was announced, that no child should be in prison. So please welcome Taimi to present us the Estonian example of youth-friendly legal system.
Yes, thank you, and good afternoon, everybody. I'm really glad to be here. And I was thinking, I don't know, should I be happy that I am almost the last speaker, or should it be sad? Because so many good thoughts are already told. And I think I am happy, because I feel we are in the same thinking level, and this is comfortable to me. So, yes, no child should be in a prison. I have visited prisons, all prisons in Estonia and some prisons in Netherlands, and I don't want to be there. Why should child? And as was the introduction, I really have worked over 10 years in Estonian most high-risk behavior children in a closed institute. What you were showing in your presentation earlier in Maarjamaa Hariduskolleegium. Yes, and I started there when this institution was a closed school, special school. And my first day of work started in the Sunday morning, and one 16-year-old girl tried to attack me with two chef knives in the dinery. And she asked, "Do you want I do 2 holes in your stomach?" I answered, "No, I don't want this. And I think you don't want to attack me, you are afraid." That was really, really awful and long work day, but I stayed there working. So what about I talking today is what we have changed in our legal system, what kind of non-punitive measures we have aimed at supporting children and young people, a little bit of statistics and a little bit thoughts what we are going to next years. Yes, when I prepared this presentation, then I wrote here, there are no more minors in prison in Estonia. Sorry, today there have 1 girl in prison of Tallinn. I just called to correct that number. 1 is today. And in the middle of February, there was 0. But we're thinking by keeping young people away from the prison experience, the Ministry of Justice hopes to increase the likelihood that the person will not end up there as an adult. According to statistics, the average man who has gone to prison is already there for 4th time, and the woman for the 3rd time, so that minors do not have to taste prison bread. We try to find other ways to improve their behavior. Improving conditions in closed facilities for children and youth as an alternative to prison, including the introduction of in-treatment methods and service aimed at resocialization and specialized training for all staff working in institutionalized youth. Many changes in Estonian system have made thanks for project financed and cooperated with Norwegian state. So thank you all. But, okay, is it working? Dun, dun, dun. Really embarrassing. Oh, I managed. Before I go any further, I stop here. What do children with high-risk behavior have in common? We believe most of them have some kind of traumatic experience in their life pattern. And adverse childhood experience are types of trauma which occur in childhood. To help us think about them, they have been classified using 3 categories: abuse, neglect, household dysfunctions. I have seen, and I think my colleagues will support me, that all these children who end up our closed institutions or earlier in prison have experienced some kind of this traumatic experience, and they really need long-term interdisciplinary help. But about our youth-friendly legal system, to prevent juvenile offences and to provide the necessary support and assistance to juvenile offenders to enable them to continue their love-appealing lives and avoid going to prison. Our juvenile justice policy as criminal policy guideline to 2030 focus on preventing juvenile crime and violence. Specialization in prosecution, introducing of consultants and court juvenile judges. The Ministry of Justice and the Ministry of Interior have prioritized expanding proceedings in juvenile cases for both the policy and prosecution. And the background of the current juvenile justice legislation. There have been major changes in juvenile justice legal framework. New Child Protection Act entered into force in January of 2016, and in Estonia, administrative territory reform took place in November of 2017, and the number of local governments decreased by 213 to 79. And the juvenile committee system was abolished in January of 2018. And the principle of preferring interventions to punishment was also introduced in 2018. Punishment may be applied only if juvenile measures are not effective enough to prevent future offenses. The principle of special treatment of young adults was introduced in 2018. Court may apply juvenile measures also to young adults aged 18 to 21. So in the same time, 2018, the possibility that the church may substitute detention with the placement to a closed childcare institution service was made. So the current juvenile justice legislation is right now minimum age of criminal responsibility is 14. For minors under 14 years, police or prosecutor may send a notification and copy of the materials of the criminal or misdemeanor case to the local authority, mainly to the Child Protector Service. Based on the assessment of the child's need for assistance, appropriate measures will be implemented. In criminal cases, public defender will be provided to the juvenile since the start. In misdemeanor cases, it will be provided then if the case goes to court. And now about the non-punitive measures to help children and young people. We have many of them. And starting to warning, participating in social program, compensation or repetition for damage caused by the crime, addiction or other treatment, meditation service, subjection to behavior control, community service, some hours, and restriction of freedom of movement. This is that electronic device, yeah? And the last, placement in a closed childcare institution. And again, punishment may be imposed a minor only if it is not possible to influence him to refrain for committing the offense in future with the means of insult applied to the minor. And now I will introduce some of the non-punitive measures what we offer from Social Insurance Board. And I start with restorative justice. All services are united by the approach and way of thinking of restorative justice. And this is approach of offenses and conflicts in a way that allows the damage caused by the conflict to be remedied. It is based on a resolution process in which all affected parties actively participate with the aim of healing the parties and creating a safe community. And we lots of use this restorative justice approach like mediating of conflicts between adolescents and adults, between workers and children who are some institutions, and this kind of. And then we have ringist välja model, like direct translation is out of the circle model. And this is a collaboration model based on intensive networking to support youths exhibiting medium to high-risk behavior. And this model is suitable for cases where the youth has recurring offenses, the youth risk level is increasing. It is a really complex case, and like child protector can't handle it by herself. Or the youth needs periodical increased networking support and one safe adult. This is, I think, really important thinking. Exactly, any child who have ended up like high-risk behavior, they only need one adult person who really care about them, who can be there every moment, who believes them, and who support them all the way. And also we use this model a step before restricting freedom, like closed childcare institution or imprisonment. Then we have multidimensional family therapy, and as said, I am trained therapist. I worked there like MDFT therapist 4 years. And this is a systemic, comprehensive family-centered treatment for teens and young adults aged 11 to 18. And MDFT was developed at the University of Miami by Professor Howard Little. And in 2014 in Estonia was a study conducted. We like choose programs, what we can do, how we can help our children, and MDFT was chosen help families and children in Estonia. In 2015, first training started, and 5 MDFT supervisors and 15 therapists started. And now we have 4 different teams located around Estonia, north, south, east, and west. And there are 4 supervisors and 14 therapists. And we also have team in a closed childcare institution and in a Viru prison, where is 1 section for child and youth persons. MDFT calls are improve communication among family members, strengthen the bond between the adolescent and at least one parent, and reduce risk behaviors in delinquency and drug abuse, increase pro-social activities, school attendance and performance. And we work with 4 dimensions: alone with adolescent, alone with parent, together with family, and if needed, extra family, school, community, and other. And now the serious place, secure care for children and youth. This is temporary rehabilitation service for children aged 12 and 18 whose behavior poses a serious threat of their own or their others' lives, health, and or development, and therefore appears a need to restrict their freedom. The aim is to provide a safe and developing environment for children with a high need for help and high-risk behavior, which as a result of trauma-informed intervention increases children's sense of security, ensures stability, reduces risk behavior, and increases the child's ability to cope. The child care, secure care institution is appropriate if everything is done already. Less restrictive measures have been implemented, and this is important. This is appropriate if freedom is not taken and greater harm will happen. There is something really bad would happen maybe if this child is staying in freedom. And application can be done by child welfare worker, prosecutor, police, or probation officer. And they can send them there for Social Welfare Act, Penal Code, or Code of Criminal Procedure. What is really important here is, again, they usually not all time locked in. They go homes, they do their trainings, they go everywhere else in society, but with a caring adult. And the secure care team has the right to restrict freedom, depends on risk and the protective factors reaching goals. And if a child fulfills all agreements and cope, then more freedom can be given them. This is our institutions, and there the children live max in groups of 6 children. Every child has its own room, and there is structured nurturing and safe environment, daily, weekly, monthly plans. Every child has its individual development plan to lessen risk behavior and strengthen issues that they have, and focusing and developing the strength of children and young people. And as recently in 2016, Estonia was the forefront of Estonia in terms of number of juvenile prisoners. In 2017, there was 20 minors in prisons. So today is 1. In the end of 2023 was also 1. So there is the decrease. And children in closed children institution, the number is staying approximately 100 over the year. 100, yeah, right number. And this year is hard because we're facing lots of really, really young children who need this service already, 9 years old, 11. And we facing also really, really a lot of children with addiction problems. And as I like to say, they use all the chemical periodic table. So, what works? We believe networking, if we believing in child, and of course, if we supporting the family. And approximately 10 years ago, during the preparation stage of the free reforms, many said that this was impossible, that this leads to a feeling of impunity, that we have no alternatives, that we cannot deal with them in freedom, that prosecutors and churches do not change, that Estonia is not Norway. But let's see what children think. Children see the aim of non-punitive measures like a possibility, like the last chance. And the young people don't want to prove themselves to adults and show that they are really capable of changing themselves if they feel that no one supports and doesn't not believe in them. So instead asking, why did you do that? We should ask what happened. Instead, just telling the young person, do you have to behave? You have to do this right now. We ask, what do you need? So let's listen to the child's story and we will find a solution together with the child. I thank you all.
Yeah, so thank you, Taimi, for your presentation. And actually, it has provided really valuable perspective that this contact with the child makes country safer rather than fences or bars or, I don't know, security control systems. Okay, so now we'll move to our final presentation, which will be delivered by Ignas Gaižiūnas. And Ignas served as an advisor to the Minister of Education, Science and Sport of the Republic of Lithuania. However, we extend our congratulations to him on his recent proposition of the new position as a vice minister. So we really welcome you here, and we thank you for devoting your time for this very important topic. And we eagerly anticipate hearing your presentation on the functioning and change of children's socialization centers in Lithuania. Please, Ignas, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's a pleasure to talk to you all here. Of course, it's a bit strange to talk about our system here in Lithuania and to do it in English, but I will try to do my best. And I definitely think it's the best to be the last, because I have a chance to reflect on things all of you said. Probably I will forget to reflect on everything I thought I need to reflect, but I will try to do that, and I will try to keep up with the time. And actually, in contrast to my colleagues, I am not a specialist in the area. I'm actually a policymaker, as I was introduced. Actually, with a background in physics, theoretical physics to be exact, and quantum chemistry to be most exact. But as a physicist, I understand one thing very much, but no person can live in a vacuum, nor literally, nor metaphorically. Almost none of us, I presume none of us here, live in a social vacuum. And this is a very important thing, because everything that happened to us, everything that we do, every, let's say, offense we make, actions out of context we make, deviant actions we make. So it is a sum of the things which are inside of us, and some of things which affects us from the outside, our environment. Therefore, it's very important when we are talking about the issues of the youth delinquency, is to always consider the environment in which the particular child is, and how that environment affects that particular child, and how we can address these issues. And therefore, this is how it works. Okay, my first slide will be about a short introduction of our system, of how we provide support to the children who exhibit delinquent behavior. And at first level, well, and it's always important to reflect whether it's good that we have this system in place, and this is what I'll try to do it in my presentation, because I do have a lot of critique towards the things we are doing, and at the end I will try to briefly explain the direction which we are trying to move with this system. And the first few levels of the support which we should provide to the children whenever the children exhibits behavior which we think is not the behavior it should be, the child should exhibit, let's say, criminal offenses and things like that. Well, it all concentrates in school and in the municipality, with the support from the people in school, with providing social emotional skills there, and occasionally with the coordinated assistance at the municipality level, which was introduced not that recently in Lithuania, where specialists from different areas should be coordinated to provide this coordinated help to the child from social sector, educational sector, and health sector. However, we could also add that it's not always the case, but this coordinated assistance helps the child, and it's in some cases more of the bureaucracy instead of the help. And after all of this, which it takes a lot of time and resources as well, we have the thing which is being called minimum care measures. I will later on go on with why I think it's such a terrible name for this thing, but it should be provided at the municipality level with services from the municipality in order to help the child to exhibit behavior which we would like him or her to do, and not to do offenses, smoking, drinking alcohol, or stealing, or things like that. So there should be minimal care measures in municipalities, and municipalities are doing this the best they can sometimes. But this is at this level, it's not always the case, but it helps the child, and the child also commits the crimes, more serious crimes, and therefore we have last level, but it's called medium supervision measures or medium care measures, which are provided by the state. And it's like closed child care institution, the one which was also introduced in other presentations, a bit different, but rather similar. So this is like the system we have. So school, coordinated assistance, minimum care, and medium care. And this is the thing I think which sounds strange or maybe stupid at certain times, because there's no maximum care measures. I don't know why we have this system, and no one actually knows. Maybe maximum care is a prison, and we do have some children in prison, but this is the system we have, and the last two levels maybe are the ones who are most important, and therefore I will go towards now the minimum care. And when we are talking about the minimum care, here are outlined the measures which can be provided by the municipality, and the statistics on last 3 years of how they're being used. So what we see that the most popular minimum care measure is seeing a specialist, which could be a variety of specialists. However, and sadly, a lot of times it's a specialist in school. And you can see the issue here that whenever a child does not correctly behave, and school reports it to the municipality, and municipality sends this child back to school and says, well, your specialists have to work. But whenever you already failed to find a relevant connection with the child, when you failed to provide the support to the child, and you get the child back and say, well, you have to work with it without additional support. Another very popular measure, also sadly, I think, it's to continue education in another school. Well, sometimes we just think that the solution is, well, the problem is with the child, you change the school. So, but we have children who changed almost every school in certain municipalities, which is being bounced like a ball from one place to another without actually getting a real support in order to change and to find a way forward. Also, we have another measures, and I will not spend too much time on those, but you can see the statistics here. But I wanted to point out these two because these two, I think, are the issue which we also have to work and to deliver changes on here in Lithuania. And then going to the socialization centers, which how they are called here in Lithuania, as a medium care measure or medium supervision measure. And the thing is that we have disclosed institutions that the child can be brought to, and where he or her is 24/7 and should receive support. But it is currently a mainstream school, and it's a relict, I think, I will be bold here, but I will say that it's a sort of a relic from a Soviet era, when we had prison schools, and certain prison schools just now shifted towards the socialization centers. And the problem is that we are still considering them as a school first. And of course, we provide here education. In a lot of cases, it's a very individualized education. So, as I think it was mentioned in one of the presentations, and this is good, but education is not always enough. But I will talk about that later. But in these socialization centers, well, children above 14 and above can be placed for 1 year. There are certain issues where child can spend up to 3 years by the decision of the court. So you can imagine if you place a 15-year-old for 3 years, well, the child goes out of the center already a grown-up, and almost entire adolescence is being spent in this socialization. So this is which is also one of the issues we have to tackle. And children here can be up to 18 years, as it's mentioned, and this socialization center should aim to reform child's behavior. boost resilience, motivate learning, provide educational support, and other important aspects. Well, in these centers, there's always a particular personalized plan for education, behavior, and social skills to facilitate each child's reintegration. And in a lot of time, not in a lot of times, but in a significant amount of times, well, these centers do work. They do provide the child with the skills necessary, sometimes very simple skills, how to make up your bed, how to prepare dishes for yourself, because a lot of children don't know even these basic things, because as it was mentioned in one of the previous presentations, all of the children who end up in the socialization centers are victims of the trauma from the childhood, so from neglect and other aspects, so their social skills are really low. But there is an issue. You can work with the child at this particular institution, you can develop skills of the child, but you cannot keep him or her indefinitely in this place. And at a certain point, the child has to, or maybe already grown up if it's 18 years old, but you have to let him or her go, and they have to come back to where they came from. And if we don't work with the place where they came from, so we have the same dysfunctional environment, which very quickly can erode any progress you made in the institutions. Therefore, for us it's very important to concentrate not only on institution and how the institution works, but what happens afterwards, and also what happens before the center. But we need to build up the environment in which the child returns, and this is even more important than building up the skills and for the child who is in the center. In 2015, we had 6 of these centers in Lithuania. By this year, we have already one center with in 2 places, one for boys and one for girls in different places. And you can see that during the last decade or so, the number of children in the centers decreased a lot. They were definitely overused by that time. Children were sent for the very, I would say, minor things, and actually we work towards reducing the number and actually figuring out the cases in which the child really needs to be in the center. Of course, maybe we see at the moment, but in particular cases, we do not admit the child to the center whenever we should, but we will see how this will go on. But we drastically reduce not only the number of the centers, but also the number of the children, because we see that only being in this closed environment doesn't work. You need to work with the child in his home environment, because, well, otherwise you just push the can down the road and you do not solve anything. The challenges we face in the centers are the things which were also already been mentioned in the previous presentations, but we have a lot of children with special education needs or disabilities, who require also psychiatrical support. And this is one of the issues we have in the center. We clearly lack a good method and a good structure to provide medical support to the children, and especially psychiatrists and therapy, and we do see as a challenge. Also, we have a challenge that there are several different pathways in which you can get to the center, and maybe not the biggest problem, but the biggest problem is that the 2 different children for a very same crime they committed can get 2 different times in this center. So one child can get 1 year and another child can get 3 years. So because there are 2 different tracks how you can be admitted to this center. And this is one of the issues, because our legal system still sees these socialization centers as a punishment instead of help. And whenever we are trying to talk about, well, let's say 3 years is a bit too much, and it will not provide enough, it will not change the environment for the child being 3 years. Maybe 1 year is enough, but we face resistance from people working in the legal system, because they still see it as punishment. You need to punish the child, and I think this is one of the issues that we are thinking that it should be a punishment instead of support. And also another challenge is that we think that these centers will repair child. Well, we do see a lot of this thinking of repairment in the centers. Yes, the centers can provide support, but we cannot repair child. The child cannot even be repaired. And you need to work on in the school where the child is returned. You need to work with the parents of the child, siblings of the child, friends, and this is a lot of work to do, which sometimes we do not want to do. And last 4 minutes for me, and I will try to briefly overview how we want to tackle these changes. And we already had a group, a cross-institutional group, working on this issue and providing a model on how the socialization centers can work. Certain things we are already doing, certain things are a bit new, but we want to enshrine it in the law, and we currently made changes to the law, but now we are in the process of putting these changes to the law to the parliament. And the two important aspects is when the child is in the center and when the child is out of the center, what happens? Well, we see that we need to put more focus instead of education towards the services and intense support, and there are a variety of different things that can be done, and I definitely will not go into the detail of these aspects, but starting from the appropriate assessment of the child, maybe some sort of interventions based on trust and relationship, and things like that. Of course, education is an important thing, and a child cannot be not educated, but when you have not dealt with the traumatic experiences of the child, there's no use in providing any education. And this is what we usually do. We spend the best time of the day when the child is most productive by providing him or her lessons, instead of doing therapy and dealing with the traumatic experiences. This is an issue. Also, healthcare services, the things which I already mentioned, we want more of them inside the centers. We do understand that there are a lot of issues, especially with the girls, who in many cases come to the center being pregnant and not knowing to be pregnant, and we do need support. So there are a lot of aspects and issues to work out here. And also in regards to the mental health, clinical psychologists, psychiatrists maybe, and well, general practice nursing, dentists, we see that there are the dental quality of the dental quality is just awful of these children due to the lack of the social skills. And during this time, this is a thing which may be a bit new, and the thing we want to emphasize is the working with the environment of the child. When the child is in the center, it's not like we can relax and say, okay, for 1 year we are good. The school in which student will come, the parents have to go to the center, and it has to be mandatory going to the center, mandatory work with the specialists here, and getting counseling for the parents, maintaining and repairing relationships between parents and children, which this is very important thing. You know, during this 1 year, the relationships can deteriorate a lot, so we need to work on this, and this is the thing we want to emphasize, and we want to more work on. And also, after what we want to do is we want to provide the services. What we see, when the child goes from the center back to its own municipality, the municipality says, well, the job is done, we are free to go, and life should be good. But this is not the case, and we think that the center specialists should also work with the child's parents or other legal representatives and the school in order to provide support for the people back in the home environment. Okay, my time is running up, but this is the last slide. And also a bit also changes we think should be done. Up to now, the maximum time in which, for which child could be put in this socialization center could be up to 1 year. And usually this is what the municipalities would do. We would say, 1 year it is. It's a maximum, and we go for it. Therefore, we want to minimize the maximum time for a child to be in a socialization center to up to half a year, and in parallel working with the environment of the child and with the possibility to extend this time up to another 6 months. And we want to enshrine and to make mandatory at least 6 months of additional support after the child leaves the socialization center. Briefly, this is the things I wanted to talk about. So I hope you find some new things. I do understand a lot of Lithuanian, a lot of people here from Lithuania in this place, so I hope this provided you with some additional information. And this is also one of the aspects we also have to discuss, but the center is still a school, and we still consider this a school. And I'm from the Ministry of Education. We should work on curricula, we should work on other issues. You know, Lithuanian guys, we have facing problems here now in Lithuania, but we should really emphasize the other sectors working in the center, especially health and social sector. And I have to be frank and honest, I do really see a lack of other sectors' interest in people and in children being here and not understanding importance of dealing with these people. It's a very expensive measure, as everyone mentioned here. It's very expensive for us. I will not mention the number. It's a high number, but we need to also invest in what happens afterwards. So thank you very much.
Okay, so thank you, Ignas, for such a comprehensive presentation. It even served as a kind of wrap up of all the, services. How can they be structured in institutions? We still have a few minutes left. Maybe you have some questions for the speakers? Because presentations are good, but sometimes, the discussion is better. Yep.
Thank you. I have a question to Taimi. You mentioned that there is one girl in juvenile jail. Other young people are in secure placements. Why is there one child in a jail? I mean, what is the procedure for getting into jail, not into secure placement? What are the reasons for this case?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Actually, I don't know this exact case. I got this information right before the lunch. But the procedure is, like I said before, you have to do everything non-punishment before you can send the child in the prison. So I think that girl have gone a lot in his life pattern, and I hope the system have tried everything before she end up in the prison. But we can't send the child minors in the prison in a first crime or in a first act of delinquency.
One more question. Okay, so I think we can finalize this session. I would really like to thank once again the speakers, and also I would like to say one takeaway question home. Usually we take away messages, but the question is, wasn't the impression for you while listening to all these presentations and also from the previous session that sometimes when we talk about closed institutions, sometimes there is just a matter of title, because when we talk about prisons, it's also about therapeutic environment, about occupation, education, risk assessment, R&R model, etc., etc. And then we just switch to another closed institution. We change the title. Why? What's the difference between all these closed institutions and prisons? Maybe that they are coordinated not by the Ministry of Justice or some other ministries? Or what else? Isn't it possible that Ministry of Justice also could provide these services and we do not need additional institutions so that we throw the child as a potato, as a hot potato, you know, from one institution to another, and we say that, oh, prison is the last resort, but it's just another institution. So this is a question just to take home, and maybe we can continue these discussions even for tomorrow. Thank you once again.